Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Friday, gotta get down on Friday. Do we even still sing that song? I don't know. We got a chai with my name on it for the day. We are feeling nice and good, getting ready for the weekend. The Denver Broncos taking on the New York Jets, staying on the East Coast. They've been in West Virginia all week long, adjusting, getting drenched with rain, going from grass to artificial turf, which they will be playing on Sunday, by the way. So there's been a lot of things coming out for the Denver Broncos. Of course, Alex Singleton is going on IR for the rest of the season due to an ACL tear, which is just a massive bummer. There's so much to dive into, and we've got my 3 keys to beating the New York Jets. One more sip of my chai. Chai teas are just so good. I know it's a coffee break, but I love a good chai tea. Not from Starbucks, but I make it exactly like Starbucks as well. Okay, let's dive into it. There's a lot to get into, and I do feel, don't hate me, I do feel like it's going to be a little bit of well, of course, Rachel, this makes sense, Rachel, that makes sense. But it kind of does feel like an easy game plan against this Jets team. Now, of course, Aaron Rodgers can be so dynamic, and he's so quick at getting the ball out, and he can see different guys. There's just a ton to dive into in Aaron Rodgers in general, but it does seem like it's relatively an easy game plan if you can. Well, let's just get into it. I almost listed off my 3 things, but you know what? We'll go one by one. Let's start with stop the run. Seems easy enough, right? I mean, truthfully, their run offense just isn't. It hasn't been stellar. But the one thing is that we do need to pay attention to is the fact of how good they are after contact. And this is where it kind of comes into play. So, first of all, O-line isn't great with the run. That's just one of those things where I feel like a lot of teams, they're good or they're not good, and they're just not great. They've had some struggles so far early on in the season, but also they haven't seen a ton coming out of their running backs as well. The one area that they have been able to really see an emphasis on, though, like I said, is after the contact. And I think that this is major for Broncos because if you guys remember a few weeks ago in my nice little 10 observations that we did, well, the Broncos sucked at tackling people. They sucked at grabbing somebody and wrapping them up and bringing them down. We had so many missed tackles and it was frustrating beyond belief. But that is one area where Breece Hall and Braylon Allen really have kind of dug into it. Last week against the Patriots, they had 109 total yards. Do you want to know how many of those came after contact? Any guesses? 88 yards. I'm like, you guys obviously are getting out of so many tackles. That's unbelievable. For 88 yards of 109 to come after they've made contact, they're going to have to be secure in their tackles this week. There can't be any just slight grabs and trying to bring them down because these guys can get out of pretty much anything. So I'm really excited to see kind of how the Broncos defense is able to line up. Of course, now with Alex Singleton out of the game, their communication has to be on point. And we'll get to Patrick Surtain a little, but he did mention something in his weekly press conference that I think has the same impact for this one as well as a different one. He mentioned communication and how this team has been really good at communicating, and they're going to have to, especially with Alex Singleton gone. He was kind of one of those guys that was directing things left and right for people. He was the ones that was filling guys in. That's what happens when you're the captain too. You get to be a leader. You get to be a voice. And now that he's gone, it's going to be, okay, next minute mentality. Who's going to be able to be that guy that can over communicate with this defense to make sure that they are locked in at the right place at the right time? And so that's kind of my big one is if you can stop the run, you're like, yeah, Rachel, that if you can stop the run at any point, you have a better chance of winning. Specifically at this one, because like I also mentioned that the O-line for the Jets is only allowing 4 yards per rush. So it's not very good. They're not moving too much. Now, that being said, I do believe that is better than the Denver Broncos. But again, we've talked about the struggles time and time again for this Broncos team with Javonte Williams, Tyler Bidet. I have to get used to saying it because I always want to say Bidet, but Bidet, he's going to have a big game. He obviously got promoted to the 53-man roster, which is really exciting, but they're going to have a big one. But if you want to beat the Jets, stop the run. Massive. All right, number 2. Be prepared for the blitz. Now, Bo Nix has struggled a little bit with the blitz, especially in the first 2 weeks. I'm trying not to dive too much into that because it feels like that's such a past Broncos team. which sounds silly to say, but it really does feel like they figured out a lot of different things that are working for this team. And that's why they looked so good against Tampa. So I'm trying not to dive too hard into the numbers when it comes to things Bo Nix has done, because really it seems like the first 2 weeks were hopefully a fluke and week 3 wasn't the fluke. Hopefully they look more like this, and Sean Payton has rearranged this offense to be able to do a little bit more and allow Bo Nix to feel a little bit more comfortable, because he looked comfortable out there on Tuesday. I loved their aggression. I loved going for the early touchdown, getting up ahead. I really, really like that from Sean Payton. So hopefully that continues, but you have to be prepared for the blitz for Bo Nix. There's a lot of things that the Jets do, but specifically in years past, we have not seen them have a super high blitz. This time around, it feels like they're trying to create an emphasis on that. When the Jets played the Patriots last week, they had the blitz 40% of the time, which is pretty high for the NFL. And they were able to make moves when they beat the Patriots. And so Jermaine Johnson is out, and that's a huge blow for the Jets. It's good news for the Denver Broncos. But because of that, they're trying to provide more help to the defensive line. So they're actually doing a few more blitzes than they've normally done. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. So the offensive line is going to have to be really stellar. Adam Troutman is somebody who's going to have to go in and be prepared for pass blocking. He did really good last week. I talked about that on my 10 observations on Wednesday. So Adam Troutman, Parrott, number 79 for the Broncos. I think it's Parrott. He's looked really solid too. He's coming for extra coverage. It was nice to see the offensive line be able to look a little bit more secure, and it was surprising because Mike McGlinchey was obviously out, but I do like how the offensive line looked. We saw a lot of really good coverage too. So hopefully those other guys, if they're going to throw in an extra tackle, or they're going to have Adam Troutman out there, or I don't know, throw in Dulcich isn't a good example, but throw in somebody else who can be out there, and hopefully that it's able to really benefit Bo Nix and give him just a little bit of extra time. Now, let me also say this, is that Bo Nix handled the pressure against Tampa actually relatively well. I think that it's not like they didn't not blitz him, but he did, and he's really good where if he feels like he's in pressure, he does move his legs, and it's been really good to see. I don't think we saw too much of Bo running on Sunday against Tampa. It felt more like we saw just an emergency. I feel like the first 2 weeks, it was like we saw a lot of Bo Nix running, and it was very, very concerning. It felt like this time he was able to step up into the pocket, even if it was going to collapse. We didn't see him stepping back as far, which was amazing. And that's what we want to see. I had done that comparison too. But on my 10 observations, I compared him with Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes from a few weeks ago, and he's definitely more in that yardage number for his step backs than he did in the previous 2 games. So that can be really, really helpful. And he's actually up through week 3. He's had the 4th highest blitz rate in the NFL. Of course, we saw the Seahawks provide a little bit of blitz. The Steelers definitely did. And then Tampa, they didn't shy away from it either. So he's handled it pretty dang well. So it's good to see that as well. So number 2, be prepared for the blitz. I do think that we are going to see it a lot out of the Jets this upcoming week for sure. And the last one that we got for you, lockdown corners. Now this one is kind of the Rachel. Of course they have to be lockdown corners. Like, what else are you talking about? We need to see that. And I definitely agree, but there's an extra emphasis because Garrett Wilson's kind of been non-existent. If you drafted him on your fantasy team, you're probably like, he's done nothing. But that's because he's been double coveraged a lot. Obviously, number 1 wide receiver over there. So he has definitely seen a lot of a lot of the double coverage, which means he hasn't seen a lot of the numbers. So he hasn't done well for you in fantasy. But there is still a connection between Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson. And you have to be very careful to make sure you don't unleash the beast in this case. Now, luckily for us here in Denver, if you're a Broncos fan, you have Patrick Surtain, who's most likely going to follow him. That's my guess, at least, on how Vance Joseph is going to handle it. And he has been a lockdown corner. He's handled DK Metcalf. He handled Pickens from the Steelers. He handled Mike Evans last week in Tampa Bay. He's done a really nice job, and he had a good bounce back game against Tampa. But this is going to be an actual real test as well. Excuse me. Now, one interesting, just like little tidbit. Excuse me. Let me take a drink. I'm almost like choking over here. When it comes to coverages, the Broncos really haven't played like two high safeties. They haven't done the split safety route a whole lot. And I truthfully believe that's because you have Pat Surtain, who's handling things so well. I mean, that's why you gave him this giant extension. So we haven't seen that. So I really doubt we're going to. It's like 29%, like less than 30% of the time we've seen that two high safety, which is going to be kind of important this week. But it's also, I don't think we'll see it again. Let me start by saying that. I don't think we're going to see two high safety at all because I think Pat Surtain's going to be able to lock down Garrett Wilson. But then everything switches over to McMillan, or as I like to call him, McMillian, Jaquan McMillan, and then also Riley Moss. And they have been such a good three-man corner rotation, essentially. It's been really good to see. McMillan definitely has lived up to the hype. I feel like last year we were kind of talking about him, but because we're not talking about him this year, I'm like, that means you're doing good things. We're not being like, oh my gosh, Riley Moss needs to be out there. Pat Surtain needs to be out there. We're seeing a little bit more from them, and just overall the communication has been really great. But Riley Moss is going to have another big game. He knows that. He's lived up to the expectations, which is, of course, amazing and been really fun to watch. I've raved about Riley Moss because he is living up to those expectations. But you got to have shutdown corners. Again, the fact that they're not having to do that too high safety definitely is helping out this team for sure. Vance Joseph, we give you your roses on that front, but we're also going to see Aaron Rodgers get the ball out. Their offensive line is good in pass protection, not great in rush or in run protection, but I feel like I've said rush and run 1,000 times, and I've just I keep thinking defensively, and then it's all mixing up in my head. Here's my thought bubbles just popping out again. But they are pretty good in pass protection. Now, one of the interesting things about this is Aaron Rodgers is so quick to get the ball out. I think he's got one of the top 4 lowest release rates when it comes to the ball. It's 2.48 seconds, and he's getting the ball out. It's good and bad because for their wide receivers, if they can beat anybody, Aaron Rodgers can get that ball out like that, and then all of a sudden you've got a dangerous threat. So lockdown corner, I like man coverage in this instance, just because Aaron Rodgers can be so dynamic. So we'll see if they play man or play more zone. It'll be really interesting. But those are my 3 keys to the game. It is a Friday. I am so happy it is a Friday. Nuggets Media Day was yesterday, which was amazing to hear from everybody. All the Aaron Gordon drama. Can we talk about that just real quick? Why are we questioning all the Olympic stuff? He's pissed off about it, tweeting things. I'm like, oh, this is not good. If you do not know what I'm talking about, go check out Aaron Gordon's Twitter. But the Broncos taking on the Jets. You got CU who traveled down to Florida. I don't know. I can picture who CSU is playing, but I can not think of it. Yes, Oregon State. No, actually. That's why, because they're on a bye week this week, and then they play Oregon State next week, which is crazy too. So yeah, that answers that question. I'm trying to think what else is going on around the league and everything. There's so much. I can't believe everything's back in full swing. It's so much fun. Of course, I'm really looking forward. I really, really hope, we talked about it at the beginning of the show, I hope the first 2 weeks were just flukes. They were trying to figure out Bo, and they were trying to figure out the offensive line. And last week was not a fluke. And this is actually who this Denver Broncos team is. Even if they do lose to the Jets, but they still look good. They looked how they looked last week. I'm okay with it. Everybody is picking this to be a really close game, which I'm happy about. The Broncos defense has exceeded expectations. They have to stay that way, even with Alex Singleton out. Excuse me. So I don't know. I'm struggling today, you guys. This is so random. Maybe I shouldn't drink chai before we talk, but one way or another, I'm going to peace out. I'm going to let you all get on with your Friday. I hope you have a great rest of the workday, and we will be back hopefully on Monday talking about a Denver Broncos W. And it's my last day, so come hang out with me. Let's just have a little party. Maybe you should get some donuts or something. I don't know, something fun. But yeah, I'll see you guys on Monday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Let's be talking about a Broncos win with James Marla, and we will see you guys then. Have a wonderful one, everyone. Bye.